Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner. Figure we get together here, Joey, after a long month away. Get caught up a little bit on Illini football spring ball. We'll do our top storylines. Illinois women's basketball won a postseason title, and we have an Illini basketball player heading elsewhere. But how you feeling, man? You rested up?
We're getting there. Yeah, it's been nice to be home for, 3 days now, 4 days now? I jumped on the radio with Piper on Tuesday. I was like, this is the longest we've gone without seeing each other in a month, and it's been a day and a half. It was a fun month of March, man. Get to travel, do some stuff, watch some good basketball. It's cool.
All right, so Dain Dainja already with a new home. You wonder if he already knew where he was going, but takes a visit to Memphis, and the Illini big man, who is fantastic in the postseason, Joey, ends up at Memphis, commits there. We're recording this on Friday. He just committed about an hour ago. I like the fit. AAC is a good mid-major conference. You could say mid-major plus kind of conference. Goes plays for Penny Hardaway. I'm sure he's getting some good money at Memphis with that FedEx money they have there. But I think the role is going to be great. Like, I can see Dain Dainja averaging 13-8 at Memphis. And Illini fans, even if they're a top 5 team in the Big Ten in a couple months or next year, wondering what could we have done with Dain Dainja. But I just think this fit makes sense. I think him leaving makes sense. I think Illinois not prioritizing him as like their go-to player makes sense. Like, this feels like Brandon Pajimski to me, and where it can work out for both sides.
Yeah, it's a good fit, and it was probably time, right? Like, you saw it. He was really good in the postseason. Like, really, really good. Illinois probably doesn't win the Big Ten tournament without him. He was good against Morehead State. It was good for him to stay the course, be ready for when his moment was there, and take advantage of it. But January and February still happened. So, and by that, I mean you can still see what Illinois wants out of that 5 position. They want a guy who can stretch the floor. Someone like Coleman Hawkins who can get out there and facilitate in that. Dain Dainja, that's just not who he is. And he's really good in the post, and that much is evident. You can't really argue that. It's just different than what Illinois wants. And I don't know that Illinois could have provided him the minutes that he wanted getting later in his college career. Memphis gives him that opportunity. As you mentioned, the competition, he's going to go put up good numbers. And there's going to be a point in January if Illinois is struggling either offensively or at the 5, there's going to be a big, shouldn't have let Dain go to Memphis or whatever that case is. Now, I understand that, but this feels like makes sense for Illinois, makes sense for Dain Dainja. He's going to go, and he's probably going to have a good couple years there. And good for him, because he's earned the opportunity to step into a bigger role, to have that spotlight, and to go have the opportunity that we think and probably correctly think is going to get at Memphis.
All right, so I'm looking at his season numbers. 67% from the field during the season. In the Big Ten, that dipped to 54%, right? Like, he was a mid-major killer, low-major killer. So that's why I think going down that level, I think he can be insanely productive. But like, he did struggle for the most part outside of the Ohio State game, Iowa game. He did struggle against teams with real Big Ten big. So I think going down the level at the AAC level, where there's not going to be as much size, there's good talent obviously there. But Memphis also loses most of its players. It was a senior heavy roster last year. So I think he's going to have so much scoring opportunity. So I think this makes sense for him. Like, Brandon Pajimski, I think, showed a model of what you can do, like going down a level and getting a big role, setting yourself up. I don't think Dain Dainja is an NBA player, but like, to set yourself up for the most success and potentially be really valued and NIL wise, I think Dain Dainja made a really good decision.
Yeah, I think he did too, and I think that'll play out this year. I don't know, is Memphis going to win the AAC? I don't know, but he's going to get a chance to go down there and play well, and good for him. And good look, Illinois was beneficial for Dain Dainja, right? And he was beneficial for them. Like, he helped them get the tournament. They helped him kind of level out his college career after things at Baylor with the foot injury didn't go the way that he had hoped. They got him here. He worked with Adam Fletcher. Brad Underwood gave him an opportunity, especially last year and obviously the postseason this year. These couple years that Dain was at Illinois was mutually beneficial for both sides. And now it's like, you don't always see that in the portal, right? And now he's kind of parlaying that into a bigger role. So it doesn't always work like that, where it works well for both sides and there's still eligibility left. Sometimes it's like, oh, that was good for Alfonso Plummer, good for Illinois. and he's out of eligibility. There's still some left for him, so it makes sense.
Yeah, this feels like an amicable split, right? Like they're like talking with Dain after the UConn game. You could tell like he appreciated his time and really appreciated Adam Fletcher. He mentioned him by name. All right, Joe, I want to bring this up. Illinois women's basketball. This season, there's a lot of expectations. Top 25 in the country in the preseason poll. Did not live up to that as they started off 6-8, 0-8 against high major opponents. Then they go 13-7 over their final 20 games. And that includes 6 wins over top 50 net opponents. And they win the WBIT with 5 straight wins and get their first postseason title in program history. Nice moment for the program. I keep telling people if it were flipped and they won the WNIT last year, because this is the inaugural WBIT this year, and then made the tournament this year, that would feel like a little bit better, but still, this is one of the most successful 2-year stretches in Illinois women's basketball of this century. So you were at the title game, the WBIT title game, where Illinois just really kind of dominated Villanova. What was that scene like, and what's this mean for the people inside that program?
Yeah, winning it meant a lot to them because they said before this thing started, like, if we're in it, we're going to win it. And they, to their credit, they won by an average of 13 points a game. They looked like the team that we thought we would see at the beginning of the season. They kind of played the hits, was what I thought of. They hit threes, they defended. Makira Cook was a star, especially in that championship game, and really throughout. And they celebrated it accordingly. There was the confetti, the whole operation. And Shauna Green said on TV and before the game and after the game, she said, "We're, thanks for this tournament. We enjoy it. It was really well put on." And I think that's 100% true. But we don't want to, like, our goal is NCAA. So if we're here, let's win it and then don't come back. Yep. Let's go to the NCAA tournament consistently. That's the goal when they got here. And I think they did a good job of managing those two lines of thinking. And they went out and they won it. So it was good to see them kind of definitely close this season strong, above 500, get a trophy in the process of it. And you're right, if they flip these 2 seasons, people are thrilled. Even if it's the first 4 exit this year, people are thrilled, right? And they talked about this tournament springboarding them into next season. 9 of the last 14 teams to play in the WNIT, which was the second kind of tiered tournament until the WBIT, went on to make the NCAA tournament the following year. So, I mean, there's a blueprint there for Illinois to get to that tournament. Now, the Big Ten is a beast. It will be a beast next year, even without Caitlin Clark, because the Big Ten is a good basketball conference. But Illinois is going to return Kendall Bostic, going to return Makira Cook, Gretchen Dolan. You add a 5-star Barry Wallace. I would assume Adalia McKenzie and Genesis Bryant. They've not made their intentions known. Genesis Bryant would have to take advantage of the COVID year. Adalia is just a standard senior. I would assume they'll be back, and Illinois will get a chance to run this thing back again and see what they can do, and they'll probably be active in the portal as well. But this gives them some momentum again going into the offseason. That's the thing when you're rebuilding, you don't want to lose momentum. And it felt like in January, and some of those losses, that momentum was slipping, and they got that back to close out the season, and they'll be able to go into the offseason with a little bit of that, and we'll see what that looks like throughout the offseason and into the fall.
Yeah, the start of that season, to start 0-8 against high major opponents, you just couldn't overcome it. But like the last 20 games, again, 13-7, 6 top 50 net wins. That's an NCAA tournament team. The last 2 opponents they played in the WBIT Final Four were the first 4 out. Like they were part of the first 4 out, Washington State and Villanova. That's like beating NCAA tournament teams, right? So like, and they did it by double digits. So what was the difference, Joey, from early in the season to what they did here in the postseason, really the last 2 months of the season?
I think Makira Cook started playing better. I think that concussion, look, it's hard when you don't, for us and fans, when you're kind of looking at people coming back from injury and there's no brace or there's no sling or there's no this, and you think, well, they're back. And that's what it is. And Makira Cook took a while to get back to the all Big Ten caliber, first team, second team, all Big Ten caliber player that we've seen her to be. I'm not putting the entire season on her, but when your star isn't the maximizing who they are, of course, that's going to have an impact. Some of the shots, like I know people don't want to hear this, they got similar shots from a year ago. They didn't make them. And like, it sounds simple, but some of those looks were good looks that they didn't make. Last season's shooting numbers were definitely were on the very high side of reality.
Yeah.
Right. And that propelled them into the NCAA tournament, gave momentum, and good for all of that. But I don't know what's the sustainability there. There's always going to be a regression back to the mean. And Illinois probably found that. And I think finally Camille Hobby. Like Camille Hobby played well when she was inserted into the starting lineup. She replaced Brent Shupil, who really fell out of the rotation towards the end of the season. But to give a post presence, somebody who can take some pressure off of Kendall Bostic, who can go kind of battle with some of those posts, and the Big Ten's got a lot of good ones. Like that helped Illinois. But I think just leveling out, it felt like there was so much turmoil. How do you play Bostic and Hobby together? Is, when's Makaira really going to hit that gear that we've seen her hit? When are some of these shots going to fall? They didn't play very good defense either at points early in the season. I think that mattered.
But now,
like a lot of that's right. Yeah, it was really good. And Adalia McKenzie had a lot to say about that. She was really good defensively. But it feels like a lot of things that ordinarily maybe you wouldn't think about, but kind of happening at once early in the season. And it's just they got out to a really bad start. And I think even with that start, if you beat a Wisconsin, a Missouri, a Notre Dame, which is a tall ask, especially without Makaira Cook in that game,
some close
Purdue, like some of those losses, you flip those, that's a tournament team again, right? The Wisconsin loss is the worst loss of the season. Arkansas, especially the way it happened, would have a conversation with the buzzer beater. Like those games are, you flip those, and Illinois might be in that first four conversation again. And all of a sudden, before this tournament run, there's maybe a little bit more of like okay going on there. But man, down the stretch, and we thought it, Jeremy, right? Like watching those games in late February, thought they don't have enough time to get into the NCAA tournament. There's just not enough games left. But this looks like the team that we thought we would see entering the season, and that's what showed up in the postseason in the WBIT.
Yeah, the way they were playing, like they beat Nebraska, Minnesota, but like the Indiana win was huge. But it's like, yeah, you have to beat Iowa and Ohio State now, and it's just those teams are two different levels of teams. The shooting, Joey, 37.2% from three last year. They were 33.5, so kind of came back down to earth. Probably overcorrected because late in the season they shot really, really well there. As you said, though, we've already heard Makaira Cook and Kendall Bostic both back. Two all Big Ten players, two of the best players that will return to the Big Ten next year. I mean, Kendall had an amazing year, amazingly consistent year, a double-double threat, 16 double-doubles this year. And we saw what Makaira could do in the tournament, just a playmaking guard. If you get Genesis Bryant back, another playmaking guard and hot shooter, Adalia McKenzie, just kind of a two-way guard that is kind of streaky offensively, but as you said, really good defensively. They could be back. Gretchen Dolan, who you and I are very high on for the future, a freshman guard out of Buffalo, New York, who is just a playmaker and played like a veteran late in the season. And then you're bringing in a five-star player and Barry Wallace as well. So a lot coming back to where we'll talk about the portal here, Joey, but you get another year. That's why this felt even more important is all those players for the most part are back. Of course, Camille Hobby's gone. Jada Peebles graduating. Samantha Dewey, H.A. Endor, and Camille Jackson, players who didn't play, have entered the portal. We'll see if anybody else does, but that's a whole lot coming back from your roster. Obviously got to replace Camille Hobby, but they have a foundation that they can build on. Like next year, it should all lead up to next year of that being the best team of these first 3 years.
Yeah, that's right. And having that core, that base to usher in a Gretchen Dolan, who, I mean, I don't know how much stock is left available to get on her, but we think she's going to be really, really good. And Barry Wallace, like just to kind of have someone usher those two into bigger roles to what they want this program to be about is a big thing. And then, of course, like those guys coming back should mean wins, right? You're not starting over. You've got this group coming back. That next year should be the year where you're not a first four team. Like you are squarely in the field of the NCAA tournament. And I know every season's different, but you're going into the third year with this group. Like it's probably time for that team to be in that conversation and ride this wave of momentum.
By the way, the transfer portal and COVID year, very good for Shauna Green for this. I mean, think of adding
and Brad Underwood, right? Like it is like those two programs have benefited a lot. And like they're not the only ones, right? Basketball programs, Tommy DeVito on the football side. Illinois collectively that we've seen in the sports we covered, Jeremy, they're maximizing this COVID year and players and helping some of those players really like Camille Hobby had a good year down the stretch, right? Like she played well. She is who she is. She's going to get a lot of shots up. She's going to, be a mismatch in the post. But yeah, that COVID year is helping Illinois. It's going to help them presumably next season. So
transfer portal, Joey, they need a big to replace Camille Hobby. Might be another big. Like you had two here. There's plenty of scholarships open for them. I mean, you have 15 scholarships to work with in women's basketball, but you should have a sell to potential bigs, just like you did with Camille Hobby, with all these guards returning. Kendall Bostic being a nice compliment at the 4, showing some shooting range a little bit.
That's huge. That's huge. I wanted to bring that up. Like sorry to cut you off, but her ability to stretch out and shoot like that, that's huge, because that was a conversation going into last year was, well, Kendall Bostic's primarily been a 5, and she's been a back to the basket post. And how do you mix that with a bigger traditional center? And like you saw that kind of, there was a feeling out process, an understanding process, a playing together process early in the season that was clunky at times, and it got better. But her showing that ability to step out, to shoot that mid-range shot, to jump out and hit a 3 here or there, I'm sure that'll be an emphasis again this offseason. That makes you feel a lot better if they get another, let's say, traditional post, which that is priority 1 in the postseason as a bridge to Haven Smith, the Lincoln Way East freshman who's coming in next year. Having Kendall Bostic be able to step out there, that's so important in terms of your sell in the portal and just how it all plays together when you get on the basketball court.
What's amazing here, Joey, is I feel like in the portal, you try and get a big who can be your starter right away, and then another big for depth. And then you might look at younger pieces with multiple years of eligibility, similar to Shea Bolin, who showed a lot of promise and flashes late in the season where, former top prospect coming off injuries at Duke, needed some time to get going, but she replaced Bryn Shoup-Hill by the end of the year. So maybe it's a guard who can develop behind Makara Cook and Genesis Bryant. Obviously we know Gretchen Dolan's going to be part of that, but that's what I'm interested to see what Shauna does in the portal, because you got Barry Walsh, you got Gretchen Dolan. You feel like Corey Allen at some point can be somebody who makes an impact, but you can add some longer term pieces outside of those bigs potentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, if the right guard came available, I wouldn't be surprised to see them get into a multi-year guard type market there to really contribute in this season. Like there's still space for a guard to come in and get some minutes and then really be kind of that lead guard moving forward next season. We'll see. But post is a priority, but don't sleep on the possibility of them going out and adding a guard. I think that's very much on the table. I think there's probably conversations happening about that now. That'll be an interesting wrinkle to this offseason. Look, as you mentioned, 3 players are in the portal. There's going to be room for Illinois to add if they want to add. So I think they'll probably maximize that with some potential multi-year options.
And we'll just end this conversation with this from Illinois Sports Information Department. The Illini's 41 overall wins in Shauna Green's first 2 seasons are the program's most over a 2-year span since 99-2000, when Illinois recorded 42 combined victories under Hall of Fame coach Teresa Grentz. When you zoom out, Joey, Shauna Green was a home run hire.
Yeah. I know maybe January and February was like, okay, it's taken longer than what you would quote hoped after last season. She's really, really good. And I would imagine
she just made us talk about Illinois women's basketball on this podcast for about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, we've been talking about them all year too, right? I mean, it wasn't just a 1 year, 1 class type of deal. Like to have a season where they had some big wins. It was disappointing early on, but to close the way they did, yeah, this was a really good hire by Josh Whitman, and you like the trajectory of that program is pointed in a way that we haven't seen, Jeremy, and done it longer than I have, but 10 years, right? I mean, it's going. I mean, there's a lot of excitement about them right now, and there should be.
I mean, when I arrived at the University of Illinois, they were okay, made some WNITs. But yeah, nothing like this. Like this has been a really impressive start to what has been the toughest job of these main 3 programs at the University of Illinois. Eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, My Favorite Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. Also, discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and fuel up your springtime goals. With Factor, you get chef-prepared meals on the table in 2 minutes with Factor's ready-to-eat meals, so you can get back to doing what you love this spring. If you're looking for gourmet meals, try meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. These are no-fuss, no-mess meals. Factor meals eliminate the hassle of prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Simply heat and savor the good stuff. So head to factormeals.com/Illini50 and use code Illini50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next box. That's code Illini50 at factormeals.com/Illini50 to get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. All right, Joey, let's focus on Illinois football because Brett Bielema is focused on taking that to another level, 18-19. Over the last 3 seasons there, coming off a 5-7 campaign. That's a disappointment, though we did see some better football late in the season. Let's break down. We don't get to see a lot at spring football. What have we seen? 5 or 6 practice periods combined here?
Yeah. Two different days. The first one, I admit, I was on the way to Minneapolis, not really awake, trying to get a change of number directory in my brain. So yeah, we haven't seen much, and like feel bad when people say, "What about insert X redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore?" I don't know, man. I feel bad. I don't like saying I don't know, but I don't know. We don't know. It's hard to get a grip on some of these things. We know the major players, right? Of course, we know some of the guys who are coming up, but some of these deep roster cuts, that's the problem with not being able to get in there and see things.
So what we rely on is asking the coaches about things. You can hear some stuff, but like we really focus to put people behind the scenes. Like we get the assistants, twice through. We get to talk to the assistants and the coordinators. We talk to Bielema every week. But a lot of these things, obviously we're focused on some of the better players, but yeah, the deep cuts we don't have as much about. But I do feel like, Joey, we're getting a little bit to know a little bit more about the personnel just based on some of these talks. But let's just generally do our biggest Illini spring storylines because we've been so basketball focused that we've kind of neglected football here. Not that we would have seen much anyway, but I'll let you start off. What do you feel is the biggest storyline so far of Illini spring ball?
It's going to feel weird. Well, it's going to feel weird not saying the quarterback because the quarterback's the quarterback, and the way that it ended last season with Luke Altmaier, I don't really say I don't have a lot of interest. You do, but I'm pretty confident I know where that's going. I think it's the offensive line. I know that's why.
Number one on my list.
Yes, before just behind the scenes here, we said, all right, write down 5 things. There's probably going to be some overlap. I thought I'm going to write down 10 because I know one is going to be overlapping, no doubt. But how does that shake out, right? You lose a guy in Isaiah Adams that they think is either a late day 2, very early day 3 draft pick. You lose Julian Pearl, who has started at left tackle for 2 years at Illinois. The right side was not very consistent last season. The most consistent piece that you knew coming back is center Josh Cruz. So they added a lot of pieces, probably very ready to play pieces, definitely very ready to play pieces in the offseason. So how does that shake out, Jeremy? That is my number one question because in a lot of ways, this program has made it the number one question with the way the expectation they have at that position, the offensive lines that they've churned out over their time here and in the past. Like you expect that to be a good offensive line. It was not early on last season. So how do these new pieces all fit in now?
Yeah, and you've done some great reporting on this, Joey. Like the vibe I'm getting, like my number one storyline is the offensive line. They sound confident in. Like obviously you got to improve, but the depth is the biggest reason for that. They feel they have 7 guys potentially that they would feel comfortable playing. Now maybe that 7th guy you don't really want to be the starter. But Bart Miller will tell you, last year he felt good about 4 guys.
Yeah, that 7th guy that you don't feel comfortable was maybe a starter in the first couple of seasons at Illinois. Again, in spring on paper, but that's the vibe we're getting. Right.
So J.C. Davis, the hype train is going. Like when I watched his film, I was like, this guy's a left tackle. No doubt. He's going to start every game for you if he's healthy. And he's a potential NFL guy. And every word we have gotten this spring is that he's one of the best linemen they've had since Brett Bielema has gotten here. So to have that at left tackle, he was the biggest offseason addition to this team. And then left guard, it's a competition between Josh Geske and Kevin Wigginton, another big ad from the portal at Michigan State. Josh Kreutz is going to be your center. I feel second most confident that he's going to be the starter on the team, him and JC Davis. And then the right side, there's some talent there, man. Zy Chrysler, I know last year didn't go well at tackle. He's been a 2-year starter at guard and at least a serviceable to solid one. We are very high in the future of Brandon Henderson, but the biggest kind of interesting name of this whole spring on the offensive line is probably Melvin Priestley. You know, Grambling State, East St. Louis, played at East St. Louis, from St. Louis, kind of undersized at right tackle, but started 2 years at Grambling State at right tackle. They rave about his athleticism. They rave about his power. He committed 24 penalties though last year, which was most in the country. So he's got some things to clean up. But Joey, they sound very excited about him, and just maybe that flexibility on the right side with him, Chrysler, and Brandon Henderson. You just have more options that you feel like can play Big Ten football on the offensive line right now.
Yeah, and look, I know people are hearing this and thinking two things. He had 24 penalties at right tackle at Grambling State. Like you hope you can get that cleaned up if he's going to be your right tackle. And the second thing is, didn't we see Zy Chrysler at right tackle for 2 games? Would they really go back to that? I do think they would. I don't know that they will, but I think they would. I think they would say that he didn't get enough reps in training camp because he was injured. He missed last spring, recovering from shoulder surgery. I think he's shown some things at right tackle this spring that are very encouraging. But to me, it's those 3 guys figuring out how that right side turns out. Maybe Zy Chrysler's a guard and Brandon Henderson's a tackle, or Melvin Priestley's a tackle, or maybe they kick Zy out there. But like those 3 pieces are going to be the way that that right side shakes out. And I think Hunter Whiteneck has shown some things. We saw him play last season. But those are the 3 names to me that are the biggest deal. Maybe someone's hearing this and thinking, all right tackle again. That's my position of concern on the offensive. And I get it from what we saw there early last season. The guy who stabilized it while still struggling is off to the NFL, and Isaiah Adams. But I think this Bart Miller, Brett Bielema, they have earned the benefit of the doubt in spring to think, okay, they're going to figure out this right side of the line. They have everybody available who's kind of really leading the way in this competition from spring into summer into fall camp. So let's see what it looks like for them, and we'll see, right? But
they knew
Priestley's a surprise to me.
Yeah, he could be the starter at right tackle. But they knew, like, we saw him take 2 offensive linemen. That did not surprise them. But then they took a 3rd. And that told me, depth is just as important to them. And it makes sense. After last year, they said it was the number 1 priority, even over maybe defensive line, was to add more depth on the offensive line, given what happened last year and how they had to move pieces that they didn't want to move in Isaiah Adams from left guard to right tackle. So obviously it's got to all play out, but just the way they talk, they sound more confident. Plus they're just adding more talent, man. Like AJ Dennis, does he make the 2 deep as a true freshman? If he did, it'd be at center. But like the fact that we're not talking about Kevin Wigginton as a no doubt starter, guy who started 6 games at Michigan State last year, that's a good sign. Like Zach Amlin, they sound high on for the future. Brandon Hansen, Brandon Henderson, TJ McMillan. I think all these guys are probably going to start games at Illinois at some point. So finally, it feels like, Joey, they're getting to where they want to, depth and competition-wise, on the offensive line. So that's why I think it's a major story. Anything else you want to add there?
I just think you're to the point. If one of those top, we'll say 8 guys, many of which we mentioned, add Geske, Whiteneck in that conversation, if they have an injury, I don't feel like it's a sound the alarm situation right now. It's not ideal. You don't want that. But there were times in the past where one of those guys goes down. And it's like, oh, this is bad. Like there's not enough ready to go depth. And look, everyone has depth in April. Everyone has depth in August. Like we have to acknowledge that, right? Like it's just a reality. Pretty much every program and every position coach will say, we feel good about our depth right now. And then does that translate to the field? I guess the point I'm trying to make is I feel more confident that this depth that we're hearing about now, and we will certainly hear about again in August, will translate into the season. I feel more confident than I've probably felt in past years.
And just to be honest with you, looking at the offensive line compared to the first year of Brett Bielema, when you had to had 3 guys under 6'2" the offensive line, it looks like an impressive offensive line. All right, number 2 for me, this is very wide angle zoom out, but you can add all these free agents, which are transfers. But at some point, your draft picks have to develop and make an impact. So for me, it's time for Bielema's first 2 recruiting classes to really produce. And we've seen flashes of it, but think about the skill positions. Caden Fagan, Aiden Lawfrey. It's time. Those guys have to be 2 of the best backs for Illinois. Josh McCray you can throw into there. Wide receiver. We know Pat Bryant's the number 1, but Malik Elzy, Ashton Hollins, Hank Beatty, Kenari Wilcher. It's your time. Those guys need to produce. Offensive line, we talked about Brandon Henderson. Defensive line, Alex Bray. You got to make an impact. Gabe Akis, can he be a star? You talked to him the other day, or we talked to him the other day. Joey was really impressive. Sounds like a guy who was upset about what he did last year. Could have done more. But in that secondary, that's a huge one too. With Xavier Scott, Zach Toby, Jaheim Clark, James Kreutz at linebacker, David Alano at kicker. That 22 and 23 recruiting classes, they're sophomores and juniors or redshirt sophomores now. Those guys have to make a big impact to help Luke Altmaier, some of these seniors and some of these transfers to put together a really good team. Some of these guys have to be the stars of your team now.
Yeah, that's what Brett Bielema has touted this program to be, a developmental program. And now you have guys entering their 3rd season with Brett Bielema, their 2nd season. It's clear to us, Jeremy, and no knock on the 22 recruiting class, who certainly had some good players. They've recruited better in recent classes, just period. They have. And guys like Malik Elzy, Ashton Hollins, you're right. It is time for those guys. I think it's maybe more critically time. Maybe it's more time for Malik Elzy than it is for Alex Bray. Yeah. Or maybe it's more time for Zach Toby than it is for Jeremiah Warren. A certain position, it's very critically time for that class to step in and be ready. But yeah, that's
running back, wide receiver, and DB are my main, your skill positions. You didn't go add a bunch of transfers at those, but running back, wide receiver, DB, your playmaking, get the ball in my hands positions, those guys have to step up.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's what they said they're supposed to be, right? A developmental program. So it's time for those guys to step in and absorb bigger roles. I think there's optimism that they will. I think there's no reason for us to think Malik Elzy won't step into a bigger role and maximize that. He's got all the talent in the world. Everyone wanted him coming out of high school. We saw Caden Fagan. We saw the impact he can make. I still think Aiden Lawfrey against Northwestern looked like, okay, he could be a guy who could be in the rotation. Is he your lead back? No, that's Caden Fagan. Could he be your second back? Could he be a package guy on certain downs? Yeah. I think he showed those things. Defensive back, I know, Jeremy, because I know you well enough and you know me well enough. We will talk about that soon. But yeah, I think there's reason to think that these guys are going to be ready to step in to some of these roles, and they'll perform well enough to keep pushing this program forward. And if you're Illinois, you hope forward being 6 games and into the postseason.
All right, Joe, you go with the next one. What's your next storyline?
Well, I didn't write this down, but your idea was good, so I'm going to take it. But let's see what this, Brett Bielema and Aaron Henry, those really have been the 2 leading the way. Obviously, Bart Miller, JC Davis, they've been really encouraged by their transfer additions in the offseason. So can they perform well enough? Can they take a step in their own game where maybe even in this spring window that your transfer cell keeps getting better and better? Can this class continue your cell of helping these transfers take that step like we've seen in basketball, right? I think Brad Underwood's got a good cell for transfers, and they've earned that reputation. Can Illinois do that again outside of quarterback? Quarterback's always a caveat, right? Because, quarterbacks transfer like crazy. And I'm just really fascinated by what that transfer class looks like this year. And we've heard good things about the offensive line, as we've mentioned. I think we can take Luke Altmaier.
Can we take a minute to focus on the defensive line? Because
my second one was defensive line transfers, but I zoomed out a little bit on it. But I think that's huge for them. It's huge for them right now.
Yeah, because I think Cole Rusk is exciting to see what he adds to the tight end room. Tanner Arkin's going to be a physical blocker there. Henry Boyer, long, big, you hope can be your next Tip Ryman. But they just don't have another piece like Cole Rusk. Maybe Griffin Moore, who showed flashes last year and got hurt. Maybe Cole Rusk and he can combine to give you more receptions there. So that's the sexier position. But You just lost Johnny Newton. You just lost Keith Randolph. You lost Denzel Jackson, who was really good. Speaking of transfers that made an impact at that nose tackle position. And now you had Anthony Johnson, Dennis Briggs, who's what, our age, Joey. Not really. 25 though. And that's
your age.
Yeah. Sledge comes in here. I mean, there's huge questions up on that defensive line, which is why the outside linebackers are so important. But I have no read on those guys quite yet. Like, I think Anthony Johnson's going to be a solid starter. Dennis Briggs has been productive at Florida State when he's been there. Sledge was a good prospect. And I think Terrence Jameson has done a phenomenal job in development, particularly with nose tackles with Calvin Avery and Denzel Jackson. But that's a group I'm eager to learn more about when we actually get to see them compete in the spring game.
Yeah, I think that's when I mentioned transfer, like that to me is the biggest one, because you need those guys, and you might need a few more next offseason. Like, not to get too far ahead of it, but just looking at the age in that defensive line room, like you might need to revisit this conversation in a year. So help those guys get to the level that they think and that you think they can get to, and that sell becomes easier, because now you've got Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph, Denzel Jackson, throwing Anthony Johnson, and like you're starting to maybe further a reputation on the defensive front. And then just in practicality, you need them to be good this year.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond your pitch, like you need that position group to step up and make that drop off. And there's going to be a drop off. Johnny Newton's probably going to be a first round pick. Like, it's not a knock on anyone in that room to say you're going to have a drop off when you lose a guy like Johnny, but you need to make that less steep.
Yeah.
And you need to use that to still protect what is still a young secondary. And you need to be able to generate those pressures on quarterbacks so you can take a little bit and alleviate some pressure from the secondary.
Yeah, the development of Alex Bray and Jeremiah Warren will be interesting. I don't expect those guys to start necessarily, but like those guys are going to make an impact. They're going to be in the rotation this year. All right, my next storyline, Joey, new assistants. You're going to have 4 new assistants on this team. One of them gone already, David Gibbs, stepping down for medical reasons. We wish him and his family all the best there. Brett Bielema left open the door that he could come back potentially for the season as an analyst, but they need to move on because it sounds like it's going to be a lingering issue here for a little bit. He hasn't given the exacts of those, and that's for privacy reasons, which we respect. But you have a new wide receivers coach, Justin Stepp, who's taken over a better room, more talented room, but taking over a beloved coach and a good coach in George McDonald. So his development of Malik Elsey and Ashton Hollins and Hank Beatty and Kenari Wilcher and getting Pat Bryant to the NFL, just like he's helped so many guys at South Carolina, SMU, Cortland Sutton, Xavier Legette, guys like that, get to the NFL. That's going to be important. Clint Sintum is the 3rd outside linebackers coach in 3 years for Gabe Backus. And he's got the most talented group on the team. Brett Bielema will say that. Clint will say that. I mean, you got some freaks in that room with Seth Coleman, Gabe Backus, Alec Bryant's really good. You add Daniel Brown to that mix. Trey Smith, Mason Moraga, they're high end. Ezekiel Holmes, really good veteran. And then Archie McDaniel with the linebacker crew, which is really thin right now. Dylan Rosiak, really the only healthy of your top options at that position. But what kind of impact those guys make? And then, man, whatever hire you make for the DBs coach, it's going to be incredibly important because Brett Bielema has said it. Like, cornerback in specific is probably the most important position group during this spring because it was bad last year and it needs to be way better with basically the same guys.
Yeah, and just how do you merge? It's just 4 new people to merge into coaches' lives, to young people's lives. Like, it's a big transition, and like Illinois is not going to come out. Brett Bielema is not going to come out like this is a huge transition because that freaks everyone out. But it is, and like it's just a practicality of introducing new faces to people who you didn't know until like Clint Sintum was hired. Then a day and a half later, it's spring ball, and like hey, how you doing? Okay, and you're trying to merge those relationships. That's not to say they won't. And we talked to Clint a few times now. He seems like a guy who they'll be just fine. Like these coaches in our interactions have been really, really impressive. But there's just a time element, right? Like Justin Stepp, I think we've talked to him. We've talked to Pat Bryant. We've talked to Malik Elsey. That is, I think after you lose to George McDonald, you hold your breath and think, oh boy, like I feel good about the relationship they've built there. I feel good about what we've heard about the other coaches. Like,
yeah, Justin Stepp was the marquee hire. Like he was the
Yeah.
marquee hire that they needed to make to, let's be honest, appease Pat Bryant. Well, you gotta have those guys around. You need those guys around and need them developed to reach their potential. Because what George was doing there, what you're building offensively, I think has been really good with Barry Lunny and that passing attack, and for Luke Altmaier to take another step forward. So that was the marquee name. But like, still, I think development wise, the DB's coach is going to be the most important hire here, and it's not going to happen for another couple months. And you don't have spring ball, so Aaron Henry, there's more on his plate, man. I mean, we talk about a huge year 2 as a defense coordinator after a disappointing year 1. He's got even more of the responsibility here. So a lot on Aaron Henry right now with that DB room.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had heard before spring that it used to be Aaron Henry when he was the corners coach was with the corners, and Ryan Walters when he was the DB's coach or the defensive coordinator was with the safeties. Last year, Aaron with the safeties, Antonio Finellis with the corners. That has kind of merged a lot more into one room under one roof. That's important right now to at least still have, and Brett Bielema talked about this after David Gibbs resigned. Like, that's important to still have a familiar voice at the front of those rooms. But that's still a really important position this summer. I don't think I say this summer, really, probably later this month, Jeremy? Early May?
May. I think that hire should happen in May, probably.
The spring game's the 20th.
Yeah.
So that leaves about 11 days. Let's say a week after. There's still a little bit that goes on after the spring game. But yeah, early May feels like a time to go out there, and we'll see. Like, the way I asked Brett Bielema, I was curious. I don't think you and I have talked about this. Your read on this. I said, are there any, the carousel's changed so much. Are there any overlapping names from that first time that maybe you could revisit? And he mentioned the NFL. Yeah. So I'm wondering if he goes and gets an NFL guy to coach the secondary. I know people hear that and think, Charlie Bullen. Like, yeah. I get it, but I'm wondering if that's the route he goes.
When you talk about this position, though, like, I think they got enough recruiters. Like, yeah, you need to recruit for this position, but you need somebody who can coach. Like, you really need somebody who can develop, teach, all those things. But I did find it interesting because when you originally made this hire, I mean, he really made David Gibbs in what? January? Mid-January?
Mid-January, yeah.
So the NFL wasn't done yet. Like, the NFL coaching carousel wasn't done yet. And most NFL coaches are going to want to stay in the NFL. Well, now that carousel is done. And there still might be some good candidates out there that you can get. So I did find that interesting that wave of candidates is still there. But even though the college coaching carousel technically is done, Joey, he mentioned we're in the Big Ten. Big Ten and SEC just have a draw. Listen, you just stole Clinton Sinham from his alma mater, right? The money, the opportunity, the stage you're on.
Brett Bielema's coaching record.
Yeah, like, again, Clinton Sinham's probably getting what? 1.8 times what he made at Virginia. So like this is a big time opening for a lot of people. So I do think you're going to get good candidates. And let's be honest, Brett Bielema was drawing really good candidates. I mean, Archie McDaniel was at Houston. That's a power forward job. Sinham at Virginia, Stepp at South Carolina. Like, you're not hiring FCS coaches here anymore. You are hiring pretty impressive resume guys, and Brett Bielema needs to. This is a really important year ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think benefited, like Antonio Finellis didn't work. Tony Peterson didn't work. The other guys, they've worked. Like, they've worked. Andy Boo worked. Like, I know that he ultimately made a move from him. I think Charlie Bullen would have worked, and going back to the NFL tells you about his coaching chops. So I think it's pretty clear they're going to bring in a qualified guy. But you're right. Like, you kind of look at what they went with, and this isn't to say David Gibbs wasn't, somebody who is quote unquote a good recruiter, because he has recruited well and he has a lot of ties in the state of Florida. But it's clear to me they want somebody who can come in there and kind of be a quote old head or just really a teacher, a coach. So be curious to see who he makes, and if in fact he does go back to the NFL and brings an NFL guy in.
All right, Joey, I'll let you get one more and we'll start wrapping this up. But I got one more, but I'll let you get one more here.
I've got a few more, but
we can go right through some of them. Yeah,
I'll just start with backup quarterback, which you and I believe. I think everyone believes I take yours.
No, I had it listed down.
Okay.
No,
I really like it when I can steal one in the middle of it. But Yeah, it's Donovan Leary. And you brought up a good point to him yesterday in our conversations. They didn't add a John Paddock. They didn't add a veteran guy in that room. Like, they are ready to roll with Donovan Leary as their backup quarterback, which, I mean, puts him a snap away. Like, it's such a cliche, right? It's such an old cliche, but like Luke Altmaier missed time. You've seen, like, it's hard to get through a whole year, generally speaking, as a quarterback. And Luke Altmaier's a slider guy.
Tommy DeVito is the first quarterback since 2015 to start every game for Illinois at quarterback. And he missed the Iowa second half, right? Like, you had to get Art Sikowski in that game. So like we know Brandon Peters and his struggles with injuries, but almost every quarterback is going to miss time. So I think not going to get another veteran quarterback is a huge sign of how they feel about Donovan Leary. Not that I'm surprised by that, because they have always talked like they really value him, but now he's kind of the veteran of the room. He's been in this scheme for now going on his third season. That's longer than anybody else other than Kirkland Michaud is the same, right? Like, so I think they're putting a lot of faith in him, because at some point he's probably gonna have to play football and try to win games for Illinois. So I'm excited for Donovan for this opportunity. And Brett Bielema, unprompted, has named Donovan a couple times, saying like he's been a standout. Said a week and a half ago that he had a phenomenal practice. So I don't think he's going to push, Luke Altmaier for the quarterback job. I think we saw enough as a playmaker from Luke that he's going to be the starter, gives you the best ceiling there. But Luke's got to work on some things and getting the ball out quicker and making better decisions more consistently. But Donovan has a nice overall skill set, and boy, he just oozes leadership. Like, all those things you like about John Paddock, like, he's got that kind of leadership capability, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and they've been high on Donovan Leary for a while now. Like, it was – Brett Bielema has mentioned him a few times. I thought last season he really took a step forward and everything that we had heard about him. So it's good for him. Like, good for him for staying the course for – and look, I know, right? Like, your redshirt freshman year – obviously you're not going to play. That's if you're playing a true freshman quarterback who isn't a 5-star that everyone on the planet wanted, that's probably not good for Illinois. But to stay the course last year, to get better, to maximize that time, and texting John Paddock and leaning on his brother and that experience, like, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. He's a mature kid. He's got a lot of tools. Maybe he's not elite at one. A lot of hair. Jeremy's
got a lot of great hair. Got a lot of great hair.
He really does have great hair. Until Jake Davis showed up, he may have been the first team MVP all hair at Illinois. But yeah, like, it's a good chance for him to come in here and be ready for a moment. And I do think he's a mature kid, an old hat in that room. Like, he's good to have in that quarterback room. And we'll see if he's thrown into the moment, what that looks like. In the ideal world, you're playing slight to Eastern Illinois. Maybe against Eastern Illinois in that first week, you get him in the fourth quarter and let him just feel the feelings of playing in a Big Ten football game or a Division I football game and having a chance out there. So it's interesting. It's interesting to me that to wrap it back around, that they didn't go out and get a veteran. He's that veteran now. He's a veteran that they trust to have in those moments, and that's a big deal.
All right, my last one here, and it's probably going to go into the DB conversation, is what do they do in the portal? Because they need more guys to leave, and there will be more attrition after this spring. And the portal window opens April 15th, goes through April 30th. So there will be more attrition. Is there enough to add pieces, and what are those pieces? We talked about guys with the ball in their hands, Joey. I still think that's the area. And the fact that they've only added one transfer DB, and it's a JUCO, Chase Canada, they seem high on, probably playing the nickel behind Xavier Scott. But you had that secondary and you haven't added. Like, I know Matt Bailey's coming back. I know Demetrius Hill's coming back. I know you feel like guys can take a step forward. Like, they're starting to talk about Caleb Patterson, like he can make an impact.
Miles Scott.
Yeah, Miles Scott's going to take a step forward as a free safety. Maybe. I feel it would feel better with a more proven cornerback, but also wide receiver. You got to replace Isaiah Williams here, and probably could use some speed in that room. So I'm interested to know if there's going to be a scholarship available, if there's enough attrition that way, and do they add first? Would they add a DB or a wide receiver for that'd be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. To me, I would probably approach DB first, because I just have a lot of questions still back there. I know it's April and a lot can change, but
And
I do have a lot of questions about what that looks like.
And I feel like with the Pat Bryant, LZ, Ashton Hollins, like I feel like those guys are going to make a good impact. I feel like Hank Beatty can do the job satisfactorily. And I feel like Kenari Wilcher adds speed. You already added Mario Sanders. So at least there's some options there. Like I know there's a lot of options in that DB room that are talented, but like I just don't know who I can count on. I feel like there's some people at wide receiver I can count on.
Yeah, we should clarify. When we say speed, like I feel like they've got options to slot. When we say speed, I'm envisioning more of an outside guy who can burn a little bit. And Ashton Hollins can do that. Malik Elzy is more power probably than speed. Pat Bryant, maybe a mixture of both there, Jeremy. But I think they would like to get greedy. Maybe that's the best way to look at this is like they'd like to get greedy, I think, at wide receiver and get an outside guy. I think, and we're just speculating here, but I think there'd be interest in a guy with some speed on the outside where there's more need. There's greed at wide receiver, need at corner. Oh, that works. I like that. I just came up with that. It's fine. It's fine.
Proud of you, bud. All right. What else you got?
I did have defensive backs, and we just covered a lot of that, and I think that's a big deal. And wide receivers, like you need someone to step. You need two guys probably to step up to replace Casey Washington and Isaiah Williams or come close to getting close to their production. Isaiah Williams was really, really good, man. And we're rehashing an old story with that. But you need some guys, as we mentioned, it's time for Malik Elzy. It's time for Ashton Hollins. Is there a younger I know Kenari Wilcher in the slot. Is there a younger receiver, Jeremy, that you don't know that we're talking about enough?
I'd love to hear about Colin Dixon, see how he's developed. Tyshawn Griffin's here, but he's rehabbing a torn ACL. So no, I think the young guys we've kind of mentioned. Maybe we can do this quickly, Joey, just because I think this puts things in perspective for people. Our projected starters as of right now, right?
Ooh.
Quarterback Luke Altmaier, backup Donovan Leary. Running backs Caden Fagan and some mixture of Aiden Lawfrey and Josh McCray.
Yep.
Right. I think Lawfrey is going to be that speed back. I think Khalil Valentine, the freshman, can push him, but you'd really like it to be Lawfrey, a veteran.
I feel better about him pushing him if you're here this spring.
Yes, correct. Wide receiver Pat Bryant, Malik Elzy, and some combination of Ashton Hollins, Hank Beatty, Mario Sanders, and Kenari Wilcher. Wilcher's a guy I'm really just because he's got that speed, man. Like he's got legit track speed. But I think your top three receptions guy would be Pat Bryant, Malik Elzy, and then which slot would you go with right now?
Kenari.
I would go Kenari too.
I'd go with Kenari Wilcher. He's just, you're right. He's got the speed. Like that speed plays something they need more of. I'll take that. And Hank Beatty's consistent. Let's not overlook Hank Beatty, but I think that speed is such an attractive element.
Tanner Arkin, tight end, with a combination of Henry Boyer, Cole Rusk, and Griffin Moore. Like that'll be fascinating to watch. Yeah.
It probably depends on what they need. Like not to get super into this, but package wise, I think Cole Rusk is the guy who obviously adds to the passing game. Tanner Arkin, his blocking, but like he played well last season down the stretch. When he got his opportunity, he had some moments. Like I think he's a guy maybe a little overlooked, but probably shouldn't overlook him for much longer.
You got some different flavors in that room, which I like. Offensive line, as of right now, I go left tackle J.C. Davis, left guard Josh Geske, center Josh Kreutz, right guard Zy Chrysler, right tackle Melvin Priestley. With Wigginton and Henderson pushing for playing time.
Yeah. Would you feel more comfortable about Wigginton or Henderson taking a starting job in that hypothetical that you just laid out?
Ooh. That's a really good question. I kind of feel similar. Henderson. I'll go Henderson.
I would go Wigginton.
Okay.
I just think that Big Ten snap, Big Ten experience, these are good problems. These are good problems to have. And like Josh Geske is a monster in the run game. He is, man. He is just a powerful, powerful guy. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see which direction they go really at both those spots. I love the idea of keeping Chrysler at right guard. I do. Like I can't shake Kansas. Yeah, I know that's probably not a fair thing to keep holding on to this long after, but I can't shake that.
Defensive line, Anthony Johnson, T-Raw Edwards, Dennis Briggs Jr.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had to say this, would it be Sledge or Bray breaking into the starting lineup?
Sledge, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, outside linebacker Seth Coleman, Gabe Akis, no doubt.
Next question.
Linebacker Dylan Rosiak, Kenana Odaluga. And this is like the base we're going over here, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously things can change. Like Dylan Rosiak could probably be the only starting linebacker if you have 3 defensive linemen and 2 outside linebackers. You could have just 2 defensive linemen and 2 outside linebackers. I'm not trying to confuse people, but you got multiple defenses. So
I like how we can't talk about this without getting down into this.
You have to a little bit to be like asterisk, like Illinois runs multiple schemes, which is a good thing. Cornerback. Whew. All right.
Oh, no.
Defensive backs. Xavier Scott, when healthy, is a nickel.
Correct. Matthew Bailey, when healthy, is a strong safety.
Miles Scott is a free safety.
Yes.
Locked in there. Who are your starting corners? Zach Toby. I think Zach Toby's probably the highest odds.
I do agree with that. And this is Tyler Strain. At this point, I have no I think Caleb Patterson is long. I think he's athletic. Like, there's so much about him that I'm like, I like those traits. I just haven't seen it. We haven't seen anything.
Yeah. He's got really good physical traits, but he barely played last year. Tyler Strain has played a lot. Tyler Strain has played nickel this offseason. So I wonder, could Tyler Strain play nickel? Xavier Scott could bounce out to corner. That could potentially happen. But that's one of the most important position battles right there. McCantos plays nickel as well. Jaheim Clark can play corner. Another guy behind, like Mac Rosetich, is getting a lot of talk from Bielema. Bielema really likes him.
He'll probably push Miles Scott. I don't know what to make of Demetrius Hill. I know someone's going to ask about that, the freshman All-American deal. I understand that. I don't know.
He's out for the spring anyway, right? So he's
yeah. So I don't know what expectations to think about with him. I don't know what expectations to think about with Chase Canada. Maybe he's the guy who ultimately kicks Xavier Scott to an outside corner. That is entirely possible. Like, Xavier Scott moving outside would register as like a 4 out of 10 on the surprise scale to me. Right. I think that's very much a possibility, even though he was pretty good in the nickel role the last few years. I just think that versatility, as you look at the roster.
By far your best DB last year. By far.
Yeah.
And then David Alano and Hugh Robertson. Good day for it.
Good day for it. Yeah. I think they're going to try to say Fabrizio Pantone is going to be in that conversation. That's fine. Because he does, right? You go back to the Iowa game. David Alano feels like the guy. Hugh Robertson, I don't know how much Declan Dooley's pushing him right now. I don't know how much you're asking Declan Dooley to truly push him right now. It feels like he's the guy. And I understand there's consistency things that people are going to hear his name and think, no. But like, he
was good last year.
He's been good. Yeah, he was fine. He was good. It was 22 that
special teams really had a lot more bigger issues than Hugh Robertson last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, hey, who's going to field kicks? Who's going to field kicks and punts? Because that is a huge question right now.
Punt returner, who can catch the ball?
Hank Beatty.
Yes,
Hank Beatty.
Catch the ball. And then
don't even think about taking a step. Wave to everybody, catch it, and get the offense on the field.
I mean, do we do the same thing with kick returner? Because Canary is the most talented kick returner with his speed. But do you just go with, like, I don't want to put Pat Bryant back there. Do you want to put Aiden Lawfrey back there? I don't know. Just somebody can work. Maybe just do Hank Beatty. He's not going to break off a touchdown most likely, but
in my brain, I like to be more aggressive on kicker. I've been playing a lot of Madden since we've been back. Maybe I'm just not the person to ask.
You're a Canary guy.
I am a Canary guy. I'm just trying to think of a wild card, like a Khalil Valentine, a wild card to put back there who can change it. I don't know if it's going to be him. I'm just thinking speed, someone who can flip the field, because I do think there's so much value in that.
Yeah, usually you kind of look at DB to see if there's that guy, but they don't have small, tiny DBs anymore besides Strain and Ford right now. So I think you're looking at one of those wide outs or a running back. I think it's Canary or Hank.
Yeah, that's fair. Or Aiden Lawfrey's a wild card there. Yeah. Real quick, any position changes that we've heard about in the spring jump out, surprise you?
Jared Beatty to inside linebacker. That's a long-term one. He's getting a lot of reps. I can tell you that with all the injuries at inside linebacker.
If they're ever a spring to do it.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, I think it's mostly like, hey, can this guy play the 3 technique and 5 technique. Can this
Tyson Rooks.
Yeah, Tyson Rooks at wide receiver is interesting. I think that's a long term. I don't think that's
agreed.
I guess we should mention Gabe Ack is still an outside linebacker, but caveat, I think you can see him inside on passing downs. Like we saw some guys do that before. So I could see Gabe Ack as kind of a speed rusher in the 3 technique on no doubt 3rd and longs. But
can you get him in a combination with Daniel Brown and Seth Coleman on the field? Like that is intriguing. That is very intriguing to me. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Otherwise, deep cuts. Nick True's a tight end now. Probably won't hear about that. You probably won't hear about that. I'm just trying to think of the ones like outside of like just like so and so moved 2 spots on the line. I'm trying to think of any other.
Yeah, and just freshman changes. Freshman wise, I mean, we've heard really good things about the potential of Brandon Hansen. Mm-hmm. There's some excitement there, but those true freshmen, you're at the point now where you add from the transfer portal and where you're at in your program. Like you should not be counting on a lot of true freshmen to make an impact. It's more about what they see physicality wise. Because last year at this time, we heard Alex Bray and Jeremiah Warren, right? Are guys that can make an impact. Zach Toby's had a good training camp, things like that. That's what it's for, like the next year, or the year after that. These early impressions on those guys are kind of formed.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any freshmen. Like if I had to pick one to make an impact in any capacity, I'd pick Khalil Valentine.
He's not here right now.
Right, that's right.
He gets here in June. Just calm people down. He's here in June.
Otherwise, yeah, you're right. That's good. It's a good sign of where your program is, that you're not leaning on those guys immediately. One name, since we talked about defensive backs, didn't bring him up, and I'm trying to think, like if someone listens to this, what are they going to be like? Why didn't they talk about X and its former 4-star Sabor Kareem? I don't know where
safety now. Safety Sabor Kareem.
That makes sense. Makes sense to me.
I love him in the dime package. Like he did that for one game, like the FAU game, wasn't
it? Yeah. That's right.
And then he struggled a little bit after that as he played better opponents. I think he's that dime package guy this year. I think that'd be really good. When they recruited him, I thought he screamed that center field free safety type. So he started out, I think, at corner, and then they moved him back to safety. He's just got so much range. He's a really good athlete, really smart kid. They obviously love Matt Krasetich. So adding talent there is great, but I'm excited about Sabor's future. I think he can be a really good player, but still probably fighting for a 2-deep spot right now.
That's right. And I only bring him up because I'm trying to think of guys who people say, well, wait a minute, what about so-and-so? As we just talked about some of these guys in these classes stepping into bigger roles. Who do we not discuss? I think we covered. We did it, Jeremy. We covered all the guys we think are going to be in positions to impact this football team in the fall.
I think we caught up. Right. If this podcast felt like we needed to catch up on spring football, women's basketball, because we've been so basketball focused. And I think that's what the people have wanted, but I think we accomplished the goal, Joey. So congratulations. They've done it, Tess.
We did it. Shut the computer till Monday. It's over.
Yeah. How's the Mac life, by the way?
It's good. I'm still getting used to it. It's nice that it pairs with my phone. I feel like everyone told me, hey, get a Mac. I'm like, no, that's stupid. I don't do any video editing. I say that people know, like we just posted videos to YouTube without fancying them up from post game. I'm like, yeah, it seems like a waste of money. And then my old computer, I say broke. I just needed to fix it, and I was kind of freaking out, and I was tired, and I was mad. So I got a Mac, and I was like, hey, I don't need to do all that fancy stuff. We got one. I got a good open box deal. It's going to do what I need it to do. I've charged it like 2 times since Monday. These things freaking last forever.
It's just a machine. It's a different type of machine, man. It changes.
It's nice. And now, real deep inside baseball, Jeremy, when we're on the road and you say, can you read this story? And we switch computers instead of saving, we don't have to look like we've never seen a keyboard before. That is quite the adjustment.
I look like my grandmother looking at a keyboard on Joey's, what was it, a Dell? There
was a Samsung Galaxy if anyone wants to buy it.
I was like, where do I put my finger there? Yeah, okay. So I figured it out, but I'm happy about that as well. All right, that'll do it. That'll do it for us on the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Thanks for listening. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Hit that like button. Subscribe to us. Hit the notifications bell as well. For Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.